Alt Fragrance is one of those companies that has really come up recently in the social media world. Being one of the more notable companies that offers cloned fragrances, Alt Fragrance has really gained a reputation in providing great quality fragrances at just a fraction of the price of the original fragrance. But is Alt Fragrance really as good as what people say? Beau Million here, coming back with another fragrance review. If you have not already done so, go ahead and click the subscription button, click the notification bell, press the like button for the YouTube algorithm, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. So for those of you that are on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook, more than likely you have come across alt fragrances. For me, it wasn't very long getting into the fragrance game that I actually came across alt fragrance for the very first time. And as I was going down the rabbit hole trying to learn more about the company, I quickly realized they were based out of my hometown. Their main store is literally only 10 minutes away from my house. So I stopped by alt fragrance, talked to the people that worked in the store, and they proceeded to show me what they have to offer. It wasn't a big store that I walked into, but it was very well put together, very clean and well organized, and everyone there seemed to have a smile on their face, which means a lot because a great experience with an employee goes very far. So Thomas, the store manager, was showing me around and showing me the different deals they had, and he was introducing me to one of the more popular fragrances in their lineup. Now, before I explain which fragrance that is, I think it's very important to note the fact that alt fragrance does a really good job with marketing. After all, in today's business world, you have to actually be more of a marketing company than a product company. After all, we know there's tons of great fragrances out there, but no one's ever heard of them. So which one is better in your opinion? To have a great product or to have a great product with great presence? I think alt fragrances does really good with their marketing. It's a very sleek and minimalistic box, and they seem to go with the fashion of less is more. So I picked up 5 fragrances the day that I went over to visit Alt Fragrance, and one of them was none other than Alt Fragrance Crystal. Crystal number 23 to be exact. Now, I'm not sure why it's Crystal number 23. I don't know if it's the 23rd fragrance in their lineup or if they just wanted to go ahead and put a number in there designating the fact that this is actually a clone of a much more popular fragrance. But as we get back into Crystal number 23, as I said before, the bottle is very sleek and very slick. It's very minimal. The logo is very easy to read, and the label isn't confusing at all. It seems to be a clear bottle where you can see the liquid, which I prefer because that way you know whether it's a clear liquid or if there's dyes in it. This one is clear, so you can obviously spray it on your clothes. The cap seems to stay on the bottle fairly well, and it doesn't slide off all too easily, although the more I use it, the worse condition it gets, obviously. I wouldn't quite recommend holding the bottle by its cap, but the atomizer is very pronounced and it stands tall, which kind of helps with the grip depending on your hand structure and the way your hand sits on the bottle. But as we get into spraying the fragrance, I'm going to mention my first complaint of the fragrance, more so of alt fragrance. A standard atomizer is going to give you a nice full spray, and even a cheaper atomizer is going to give you somewhat of a full spray. I feel like alt fragrance atomizers, though, I feel like they're only quarter sprays. As you see, when I press the atomizer, it only gives a very, very little bit of product. Now, that may not be the worst thing for some people, and considering the fact that these are actually extrait de parfums, that might actually be a good thing. But as we all know, just because something is an extrait does not mean it's actually that powerful. Nonetheless, let's move forward. The smell of the fragrance is actually extremely appealing. Let's go ahead and discuss the note breakdown. According to the Alt Fragrance website, the top notes are jasmine, saffron, and orange. And that's great because I really do notice a florally top note as well as even some citrus. So I feel that that's pretty accurate. The middle notes are Everneal and Ambroxan, and the base notes are cedarwood, ambergris, and fir balsam. Now with Crystal number 23, yes, I definitely do notice that very citrusy and florally top note. As a matter of fact, the opening of this fragrance is fairly bright, and in my opinion, it's very appealing and inviting. And once we get to the middle and base notes, then the fragrance really begins to settle down and becomes more of a smooth, warm feeling that is more of it's still inviting, but it's more appealing now. Now it seems to be a little bit more mysterious. Yes. Overall, this fragrance is really nice, and I really do appreciate it. My only complaint is more of a complaint with the company. We got to work on this atomizer for the smaller bottles. After all, I do own some of the larger bottles from Alt Fragrances, and the atomizer for those bottles are much more full. These quarter sprays, though, I really struggle with. Maybe it's good for the person just getting into fragrances, and it helps them to be able to be more particular and more intricate with how they spray, even maybe much more dialed in. But it's also kind of deceiving because I really don't know how much I'm applying. That being said, I've noticed this fragrance will last 4 to 6 hours on my skin, and on clothes, I will even notice it till the next day, although it will wash off after one wash cycle in the washing machine. Nonetheless, for this size bottle at $40, it's a pretty good buy. I happen to really appreciate it, and I do enjoy wearing this fragrance. But here's the real question. Does this hold up to the original fragrance that this is a clone of? After all, Baccarat Rouge 540 is one of the most popular and hyped fragrances in the community today. It's also one of the most expensive fragrances in the community today. So does it live up to the expectation for it being a clone of BR 540? Let's find out. Now, I do not own a full bottle of BR 540, nor do I actually own any of the original BR 540. I went on Etsy.com, and for $40, I was able to purchase 10 milliliters of Baccarat Rouge 540 Extrait. Extrait is simply just a more condensed version or a reformulated, more concentrated version of the original BR 540. And I must say, the seller of this fragrance did a really good job at presentation. Just a side note, Etsy is a great way of getting a hold of niche fragrances at a very low price. Most of the fragrances on there that are of niche quality are going to be somewhere around $40 to $50 for 10 milliliters. And considering the fact that this fragrance is hundreds of dollars for a small bottle, that's actually kind of a steal. Just verify the seller first before making the purchase. Back to the program. So the question is, does Crystal number 23 from Alt Fragrances even compare to Baccarat Rouge's 540? Now, I asked the manager over at Alt Fragrances if this fragrance from Alt Fragrance is a clone of the original BR 540 or the Extrait version. And he informed me that this is more of a clone of the original 540, but since that all of their bottles are Extrait concentration, I really don't know what that means. Kind of ambiguous with that, right? Nonetheless, we can at least determine quality and differences of quality. So let's see how they hold up. Crystal number 23 on the opening is really, really nice, although I do smell a lot of alcohol in the initial spray. Well, that makes sense because clone companies, what they're really trying to do is take the oils and formulation of the original fragrance, but they're gonna end up using cheaper materials. It's impossible to replicate a $400 fragrance in a $40 bottle. So initially I smell that alcohol, but that alcohol dies really, really quick. And then I smell what I already mentioned, the orange, the saffron. I notice those notes. It's very florally, the jasmine, very florally and very citrusy. And then it dies down and becomes very smooth. Actually a really appealing scent. But the BR 540 Extrait, let's see. Once again, great bottling. I love it. Much more comes out of this atomizer, and I really, really like it. So that initial smell, I don't notice any of the alcohol, right? None of that alcohol is really coming through. And what I will say, based off of the initial spray, the top note, I notice a lot of the same and similar notes, although it's minus some of the citrus, and it seems to be a little smoother and a little sweeter on the top note. So right off the top note, I don't notice any of the alcohol that comes through, which I really appreciate considering the fact that this is a very expensive fragrance. But the top notes are even a lot different than the top notes of Crystal number 23 or the original Baccarat Rouge 540. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of similarities between the top notes of each fragrance from a nose perspective, but when you look at Fragrantica, really the top notes are totally different than what the original BR would be, or at least what Crystal number 23 is, right? The top notes are bitter almond and saffron, which I really do notice that saffron note now in this one, and that bitter almond does seem to be there now that it has been mentioned. It's much smoother, much sweeter, and in my opinion, much more, not inviting, but much more appealing. The middle notes of BR 540 Extrait is Egyptian jasmine and cedar, which is kind of interesting because jasmine was in the top notes of the original formulation, where now we find jasmine more in the middle notes. And the base notes of the extrait version are woody notes, ambergris, and even musk. So the very interesting thing about these two fragrances right here is that the top notes of Crystal 23 seems to be very bright and opening, and then it mellows down to a more smoother and sweeter middle and base note. Where on the other hand, the top notes of BR 540 extrait, the actual version of it, the top notes seem to be much more smooth and much sweeter, and then it still mellows down to kind of a smooth and sweet middle and base notes. That being said, even though there are clear differences between each fragrance, they kind of all mellow out to be fairly similar. As a matter of fact, if I smell Crystal number 23 on my left hand, and then I smell BR 540 extrait on my right hand, there are a ton of similarities, but here are a couple differences. As both fragrances have died down, still Crystal 23 is a little bit brighter and more citrusy and more open, where BR 540 extrait version is much smoother, much sweeter, and it seems to be even a little bit more complex or fuller of a fragrance. Some of those differences I did expect as far as the complexity and fullness of BR 540 extrait in comparison to Crystal number 23 from Alt Fragrances. But when it is all said and done, Crystal number 23 is still a phenomenal buy, and for $40 for 1 ounce, I believe it is, or $50 for 2 ounces, that is actually a really good buy. So here's how I'm treating this. If I want to wear something like this to the office, or on the everyday life, I will go to Crystal number 23 because it's a really, really good buy, and it still has great longevity. But for a date night with the wife, or maybe a business meeting, or maybe something that's a little bit more intimate or even professional or upscale, I'm going BR 540 extrait. Nonetheless, you can't go wrong with any of them. And there you guys have it. That was Crystal number 23 from Alt Fragrances. If you have this fragrance, or if you've even smelt this fragrance, let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section below. But once again, Beau Million signing out. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel one more time. If you have not already done so, I would love for you to click the subscription button, click the notification bell, press the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.